It's a super green. I always kind of call it a little bit like the counterpart to the nettle. It's a heal all. It's incredible.
Hello and welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through nature connection. I'm your host, Rosalee de la Forêt. I created this YouTube channel to share trusted herbal wisdom so that you can get the best results when relying on herbs for your health. I love offering up practical knowledge to help you dive deeper into the world of medicinal plants and seasonal living. Each episode of the Herbs with Rosalee podcast is shared on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast app. Transcripts and recipes for each episode can be found at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or through the link in the video description. Also in the video description, you'll find other helpful resources. For example, to get my best herbal tips, as well as fun bonuses, be sure to sign up for my weekly herbal newsletter. Okay, grab your cup of tea and let's dive in. First up is the Herbs with Rosalee Student Spotlight. Each week, we take a moment to celebrate one of our amazing students and their inspiring contributions to our herbal community. This week, we're shining our spotlight on Milena Savini in Alaska. Milena joined Rooted Medicine Circle in early 2024 and later enrolled in our Herbal Energetics course in the same year. Milena has been an engaged and thoughtful student, bringing deep awareness to her herbal journey. She shared beautiful reflections on her sit spot where she observes the changing Arctic seasons. Her capstone was this fascinating and inspiring project where she shared how she and her family find the Arctic herbs under the snow. Her written description of how her capstone project weaves in the concepts taught in Rooted Medicine Circle was poetic. Milena's enthusiasm for plant relationships and reciprocity is truly inspiring. So thank you so much, Milena, for your curiosity and for your dedication. We're so happy to have you in our herbal community. In appreciation for Milena's contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending her a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of sustainably sourced herbal supplies. I love Mountain Rose Herbs. I've been buying from them for over 20 years. I love them for their top quality organic spices, their herbal remedies, and even those elusive botanicals that can be hard to find. With their wide range of products and nationwide shipping, they're a trusted source for all things herbal. I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to Mountain Rose Herbs for celebrating our amazing students. If you'd like to explore Mountain Rose Herbs' offering and support this show, you can find the special link in the show notes. Sometimes you have a pretty good idea what someone's going to talk about on a podcast. For example, if someone's going to talk about nettles, you can safely bet you're going to hear about nutritious leaves and those stinging hairs. But I have to say, this conversation with Carin was very unexpected. First of all, she chose an herb that I wasn't very familiar with, so I learned a lot there. And then she had some really fascinating perspectives from biodynamic farming. You're in for a treat. For those of you who don't already know her, Carin Fortin is an herb farmer, herbalist, and teacher who grew up in Switzerland and has been living in America for 25 years. She's a member of national and international biodynamic agriculture committees and is active in the Santa Cruz Anthroposophical Society branch. Together with her partner, Delmar McComb, she started and runs Blossom's Biodynamic Farm in Aromas, California, where she grows and value adds medicinal herbs from all over the world. She distills hydrosols, makes skincare products, and other health products. Blossom's first line of California-grown remedy was a range of digestive bitters, picking up Carin's family's Swiss tradition. You can find more of her herbal offerings at blossomsfarm.com. Carin, I'm so thrilled to have you here. I love the sound of the rooster in the background. I'm excited to hear about your life as a farmer, but first of all, just welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I really know very little about you from your bio and everything, so that makes it really exciting for me to hear about your life and how you got started on the plant path. So I'd love to begin wherever you would like to begin your story.
Yeah, I think it started, and that might sound funny, but like it started with a difficult birth, and then being in the incubator and developing eczema right away, and then being born into a family of healers and naturopaths. And my grandmother was quite a strong personality, and she manifested big time. So she manifested a spa in rural Switzerland, which was high end, like starting in the 1920s. And she was known for spa treatments like colon therapy, colon hydrotherapy. And so people from all over the world came to us as family and to cleanse and to enjoy the rural Swiss countryside. And my pretty much my whole family was involved in it. Like my mom as a nurse and my dad as a naturopath, my brother and my grandmother all did the same school, like in southern Germany in Munich. And me growing up as the little sicklish child who was just really good at drawing, and everyone's like, "Oh, let's send her to art school." And I pretty much the most of my life, I until I was 42, I was designing and drawing, and I very much enjoyed being creative. And but I always felt like I was just like working on the surface, and I was working on the surface of um, not really fulfilling what I was born for. And I was also running away from my family because of many reasons, like many people do. But I think I ran away from my family because I felt there was no space for me. And funny enough, when um, my m- my father, my brother, and my mother passed away, that window opened for me to
Mm.
go down the path of healing with plants, and things just fell in place. And I had midlife crisis, and from working in New York, which was as far as away as I could run away from rural Switzerland,
Mhm.
um, um, to really jumping to California and ending up in Esalen, like on the ocean,
Mm.
in the farming garden, and had my hands in the earth, and I knew I have to heal with plants, and I had this is why I was born. And one thing kind of everything fell in place by finding my partner, and he had a biodynamic farm, and I grew up with biodynamic food and surrounded by beautiful farms in rural Switzerland, and even with anthroposophy, which is the base of biodynamics. I'm kind of in the periphery, but not really there. And so I kind of came full circle to California and started growing plants, which was really important for me. My parents were the plants were like more like a head construct, even though we went on herb walks, and there's the Alps, and you go and you wild forage a bit. But and they made dietary supplements, like and on a pretty large, not massive scale, but pretty impressive. And but the earth part, the soil, the earth connection was missing. And when I came to California, I and when I started farming, I knew I have to heal with plants by growing them and by getting to know them from the seed to the actual product that heals. And you say to the product, to the vibration that then goes out into the world. And I'm eternally thankful
Mm.
for my family and the way I grew up in Switzerland. You know, I mean, growing up in untouched nature with pine tree forests and elderberries and like nettles everywhere, and like I'm eternally thankful. And but this is my home now, and
Mm.
here this is where we grow herbs on a 45-acre farm, but 5 acres are only cultivated, and uh, the rest is wild oaks and nature. And then we also started, we as my partner and I, we also grow vegetables now because food is medicine and medicine is food. So there's a overlap with sauerkrauts and oxymers and juices and like and skincare, and skincare is skin food. So yeah, so I'm kind of far away from home, um, kind of full circle.
What I love about that story, Karen, is I feel like this is a thread I often see when I hear people's stories, but they like feel called to the plants and like they
Yeah.
hear the calling and then it's like they know like, oh, this is what I have to do with my life. And you really just demonstrated that in a really beautiful way. And how you've had this kind of circuitous, like you grew up. So few people grow up in a family of healers or a family of herbalists or, a family of like people interested in natural health. That doesn't happen very often, although I hope it happens more and more frequently.
Yeah.
But I don't often hear that. But it's kind of interesting of like you grew up within that family, but that wasn't your immediate obvious path because of, your circumstances.
Mhm. Well, I think I would say like I think we choose our family, we choose our parents, and I think I chose my parents for many reasons, but also for reasons to grow through and with them, and running away from them and finding my own way to um, work with plants was part of it because I many times I think like what would have happened if I stayed in Switzerland? Switzerland is very um, angular, very controlled, and I don't think I would have ever had the creativity to do what I do here, and also the freedom, and it's kind of the old world, and California is very much the new world, and I definitely rebelled like against my family, and then beautifully picking up what my family did, but really going a step further by growing the plants, but also just picking up different traditions, and the farming is a big part of it. Yeah.
And did you go to any specific school or any specific like
Mm.
apprenticeship for the farming? Mhm.
For the I'm part of a biodynamic association, and like I have mentors, and like and I did a million workshops and weekends, and I did not do an apprenticeship because that would have meant like not attending my own garden for like a year.
Mhm.
But I did, and when it comes to herbalism, I started two trainings and I never finished them because every time I started them, summer or spring hit, and I could
Mm.
not finish it because there's only so many hours in the day. But I would say, and the people that I was inspired by, that was definitely Matthew Wood and Michael Chiara here locally, and I did part of his training, and and I tried several years to finish it, but my there was a reluctance with traditional Chinese medicine, I have to
Hmm.
say, um, and uh, and I also going back to biodynamics and biodynamic farming, diving full into it. I was deeply curious about anthroposophic medicine. Again, anthroposophy being the base of biodynamics, and like based on lectures by Rudolf Steiner. So I started taking classes and workshops, and I'm actually right now doing a 4-year pharmacist training as anthroposophic uh, pharmacist, and that's beyond what I ever imagined. I was said like, oh, in my next life I'll be like a doctor or something, and in this life I just dabble around. Like, but what I mean with that is, I always felt like I have to have a degree, and then looking at what I'm doing is kind of there is almost kind of no degree for it, and like and bringing these things together, and eventually we'll get a degree like after these 4 years, and but it's more like what I really appreciate about my approach to herbalism is that cows are part of that, like the cow manure that goes onto the plants that actually as compost and allows the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom is equally part in my everyday life as is the plant kingdom and the soil, and kind of looking at the plant also as a reflection of the human being, and studying the human being as much as the plant, and kind of seeing like whatever, I think Rudolf Steiner once said, whatever plant is lacking in our inner garden is the plant that we have to be healed with. And
Mm.
so I will not live long enough to learn everything that I want to learn. And I feel like I'm on a path, and it's just so beautiful.
Mm. Oh, I really love that. And I love just I know I'm really good friends with farmers. I know how like how consuming it is and how, like you said, spring summer hits and then there's choices to be made and um
Yeah.
there's and then that like and I just really appreciate your spirit too of like there's always more to learn and that you recognize that you know the quantity of that. Um yeah, there's just something I can tell you're very hands-on learning. Like you're learning every day out there and um in the garden and yeah, you had asked me before we started the recording about my own plant path, and this is about you, but I will mention I did go to Michael Tierra's school and did end
Mm,
up graduating, but I did
mhm,
have a moment where because when I signed up for it, I did not realize that I was signing up for traditional Chinese medicine school.
mhm,
And I had a moment where I realized that, and I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. Especially because in the beginning, those terms are just so kind of out of this world and just didn't resonate with me and I just didn't understand and but I did persevere through it and I'm very grateful for that Chinese medicine background
awesome.
now. But we just have that in common that we both spent some time there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I used to come down too for their, they had the live seminars, so
Yeah,
I'd come down to your neck of the woods for that as well.
beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear about the plant that you've chosen, Ashitaba. Is
Mhm,
that right? Ashitaba?
mhm,
And for listeners, I thought I'd just tell the story about how I found you for the podcast. And you were actually recommended by our podcast manager, Emily Thomas Anderson. And she told me that she'd had this fascinating conversation with you about this plant at the farmer's market, I believe. And so she highly recommended you for the show. So this is a plant that's new to me. And I looked it up just a little bit. So I just like knew something about it. And I was so like, enamored and interested in it. And then I just like closed everything down. I was like, no, I'll just wait and hear what Karen has to say about it.
mhm,
So
mhm.
I'd love to dive into your chosen plant.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is a plant that the world needs to know. Our part of the world needs to know about, like
Mm.
usual ignorance, kind of like it is known in other parts of this planet. Um, Funny that you say that about traditional Chinese medicine, because I noticed that I do grow a fair amount of Chinese, Japanese herbs, and there is something I have to um, follow up one day, kind of like where, why. But Ashitaba is a plant that I feel very much attracted. I always felt attracted to the Angelica, archangelica, and being Scandinavian partially myself, and having kind of archangelica growing like more in the polar regions, and I was always fascinated, and I always loved that plant, and I feel it's a very moon being. And when Ashitaba was introduced to me, and I think it was mainly like through my partner, who knew people in Northern California who also grew it, I felt like, wow, this is kind of the brother, or the male counterpart of Archangelica. And if you just imagine that, like, in if you imagine like the human being three-folded, with a nerve sense system, with a rhythmic system in the middle, and then a metabolic system, so a beautiful balance, and apply the same thing on the globe, on Earth, and the being of the Earth. So the polar regions are more like the head regions, and then you have the temperate zones are kind of the rhythmic, the heart. And then the equator is kind of the where everything is kind of decomposing very quickly, where everything is fast, and so that's kind of the metabolic system.
Hmm.
And when you compare those two angelicas, then how the archangelica is very much kind of like the north, like the poles, like where it kind of works on the head, but it also with the digestive, like with the oils, kind of how it works on the digestive system. And keiskei, Angelica keiskei, like tomorrow's leaf, like Ashtaba, um, is actually grows in the temperate zones. And how you work with the sap, and mainly the leaf, and not the root, and not the flower, nor the seeds, kind of on the rhythmic system, on the blood, purifying the blood, kind of is such a beautiful example how the plant kingdom actually is a mirror of our threefoldedness.
Hmm.
And what's so beautiful about the Angelica keiskei. It's like this Angelica that can get really massive, like let's say it was like how kind of like 6 feet tall. It's not as it's actually way beefier than the archangelica. The archangelica is like more slender. It's really like the moon and the sun. So Ashitaba is the sun. It's kind of like the male counterpart to the archangelica. And it gets really beefy stems. And when you cut the stems, it oozes almost like neon yellow sap. And that sap is full of chalcones. It's like full of antioxidants. And the yellow in the doctrine of signatures is a beautiful liver signature. Works beautifully on the liver. It works really beautiful on the blood, to the point where it's energizing is actually not because it's caffeinated, it's actually because it's strengthening the blood. And it's a super green. I always kind of call it a little bit like the counterpart to the nettle. It's a heal all. It's incredible. It has been discovered like on the islands, on several actually islands south of Japan, the blue zone, I guess you can call it, because people lived way longer, kind of 100 years and longer, because they had it in their diet. The lack of grains, it was also a necessity just to eat this green, and so it is an adaptogen, a longevity herb. Full of antioxidants. It's used. We actually work with 2 practitioners. They use it as cancer prevention, but also cancer treatment. And I take it every morning as powder, which we powder it, and I take literally like a knife tip every morning. And I feel like I'm turning into a samurai when I do that, because it's slow releasing, plant-based, caffeine-free energy. And you can say there's I always look at adaptogens, like going back to the 3 systems. It's not just like comfrey, I must reproduce cells, it's like this is what I do best. And and then like an adaptogen is like, let's take a look at like where we need to nudge this being. And so an adaptogen being kind of really balancing out the whole body wherever you need it. And Ashitaba is in that regard really amazing because it has a nerve growth factor. It kind of works on the nervous system. It works on blood sugar. It works on. It's mainly used for cancer treatment, but I mentioned the liver. I use it for hair, in a hair oil, and it's in our skincare because of the sap and the antioxidants. And so it's kind of like it's a heal all. And again, there's plants for me who have incredible chi. It's like and this plant, we had it grown in big 25-gallon pots in the hoop, and believe it or not, a gopher got in there, and timber, like the stem was that big. The whole thing kind of like Ashitaba, timber down. And it's like, okay, I'll work with the whole plant, start experimenting with the root as well. And I put it on the table. Someone happened to put a cardboard box on it, and everyone forgot about it. And a week later, I see like under the cardboard box, like, yeah, it kind of like grew out again under the cardboard box. I'm gonna live. So it has this. Ashitaba in Japanese actually means tomorrow's leaf. And there's a myth attached, like that it grows a leaf a day, which is not true, especially not here. But it's more like it has this regenerative forces. So basically, it kind of heal it the next day, and that's so we tincture it, we make a powder, and I really think why did I choose this herb? Because I really feel like as in our evolution as human beings, we Ashitaba works on the blood, and we need to step up, and we basically, I feel we like challenged to a point where there's a trial where we have to live up and to our highest, like as human beings. And I feel, and there's plants out there who can help us. And lightroot is another one that I chose today. And there's plants who strengthening our core, and they help us on our way. And I think when I talked about the inner garden earlier, so why would I use Ashitaba? Because if you look at our inner garden, um, we need to be strong. We need to be that samurai kind of stepping out in the world right now to do the work that we were born and called to do. And every individual and every human being has a different calling. But Ashitaba helps us on that way, on that path.
Hmm. Mm. That's really beautiful, Carin. You've shared so much about Ashitaba. I would like to just back up some,
Yeah.
just to get my personal questions answered. um, I have to admit, when I first saw it was an Angelica, I just thought, oh, this is probably
Mhm.
like another species of Angelica that we work with in a
No.
very similar way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been corrected on that, which is really fun. Just, like you
Mm.
said, I know in my short, like looking at this is a very big plant in other parts of the world. So I'm thrilled to get to know it now, um, through this. And one question I have is, I think I saw that it was like the greens are eaten, like you said, some
Yeah.
similar to nettle greens. I'm curious, are they aromatic in the way that like an, Angelica,
Mhm.
Archangelica, so they do have like an aromatic quality to them?
Yeah, it's a little bit like we sell it at the farmers market. Basically, we have the apothecary booth right next to the vegetable booth, and then
Mm,
we sell fresh ashitaba for people to use it also fresh because that's the best. And it has it's really fun to actually lick that yellow sap, and it has like a bitterness
hmm,
but a sweetness at the same time, and it's crunchy. It has sweetness, so it's almost not celery like, but it goes into that direction. So it's
okay.
bittersweet. Yeah.
Hmm. And so when you're eating the leaves, you can be like there's that sap and stem that you're getting along with the leaves as
Yeah.
well. I was wondering when you were describing the stem, I was just wondering again, like Angelica, Archangelica, is famously made into a
Yeah.
candy. Um,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
stems, like, is it a similar thing to that you would just
You
prepare the
can,
stems to eat?
but it's actually not. It's beefier. It's not as hollow. Funny
Hmm.
enough. So again,
Okay.
and I you could. I mean, I made that once with archangelica, and such a pain. It's with the peeling and like. But I mean, it tastes incredible. But
Mhm.
you could. I think it just has different. It would definitely taste different. It has like it's sweeter, but
Mhm.
sweeter. Yeah, the archangelica is more aromatic, oily, but watery at the same time, which sounds funny, but like, yeah. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Interesting.
when you chop the root, it's incredible. It oozes yellow as well. It's like I didn't expect
Hmm.
that. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's almost like the counterpart to how much oil you have in the whole archangelica. It's like you have the sap in the whole keiskei.
All right. You mentioned that Ashitaba likes to grow in temperate zones, and I heard you say that you're growing it in a hoop house, so it likes the warmth more. It just made me curious. There might be others out there who aren't lucky enough to have you nearby where they could go to the farmers market and get
Hmm.
Ashitaba from you fresh. So I was wondering, could you share a little bit about like how it likes to grow and where
Hmm.
it might grow? Something tells me it's not going to like my zone 4 garden.
Um, I mean, you can always give it a try. It's like you could move it inside. The reason why we had it in a hoop, we noticed it doesn't like direct sunlight. So it's not like
Mm,
California. We have a lot of silica, basically like sun, and it doesn't. It grows best under trees or in shade. And if you think coastal climate, Japan, you have like overcast, you have more a moist, uh, and we grow it in. We have a high, like a sandy soil, um, and but I would say the most important thing is kind of we had the biggest plants under trees next to a compost
hmm.
and in shade, and so and it does like water, but well drained soil. Um, but you can try it in a pot. It actually kind of it likes. It's like other plants like they just no way. But like it is a plant that you can grow in a pot, and we shipped some to friends on the East Coast, like an herbalist who then they put them in the greenhouse right now, and they grow them in it's basically in upstate New York, and you just have to take them in during
Mm.
winter. But I think it's a highly adaptable plant, and you'd be surprised. But what it doesn't like is like heat. I mean, heat as in tropical heat, overcast heat. It would thrive, but not dry
Mm.
heat and kind of. So it's definitely it has a strong water element. Yeah,
Hmm.
besides being a
All right.
sunbeam. Sure.
Good to know. I live in a high desert, so it's very dry and hot here. So I might
Yeah.
have to pass on that one, but I'm so enamored and interested. So,
Well,
um,
I think the plants. I think like if you talk to it.
coax it,
Yeah.
say sweet things. Okay. Um, let's see what else. I felt like I just had 1,000 questions about Ashitaba.
Yeah.
So people eat it as a green, and so I'm kind of imagining it in like fairly large amounts. But then you mentioned having it as a powdered herb, not large amounts.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I was
Well,
wondering.
I mean, not necessary. You
Yeah,
can
okay.
eat anything in large amounts. You can make it your daily green for sure.
Mm,
But when you powder it, I just believe in microdosing, so that a knife tip a day is really changing your vibration.
mm,
And for me, it's really just about rhythm, and not. It's kind of like rhythm replacing power. So it's quality versus quantity, and it's like if you have a if you dry it raw, and if you store it well, it really looks like matcha powder, and you don't need much. And it's a pleasure. I just take it. People say, "Oh, can I put it in my smoothie and stuff?" And it's like, well, why don't you just try to get to know this plant by just put it straight in your mouth and then kind of chew on it a bit and then just swallow it. And it's also beautiful. It works on the gut lining gorgeously,
mm.
with the fiber and the as a plant, and so I like it therefore as well. And my it sounds funny, but my we always joke the way to the American heart or gut is through the latte. So we think the world or America needs an Ashitaba latte.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds
Mhm.
delicious.
But yeah, you can like when you eat it fresh. Um, it's basically the leaves and the stem, and you can cook it, you basically treat it like a vegetable, of course, but as dietary supplement, you can also put it in your herb salt. It's more like this yeah companion that you
Mm.
eventually have.
I like how you said that you encourage people just to get to know it versus, just throwing it in a smoothie to start.
Hmm.
And that was one thing I really appreciated about your sharing is talking about how you've been working with this plant for a while and you like feel that it's like that it grows inner strength and inner guidance. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know if there's really anything more to say about that, but I just wanted to circle around to it because I felt like that was really important and something that to me is often like the real beauty of plants is when we work with them as allies and really spend time with them and then get to have that sense. Like you could know that like your best friend types 100 words a minute, but that doesn't really tell you about the essence of who they are and like how you feel when you hang out with them. And I feel
Hmm.
like that's kind of what you're sharing. It's like we could know that Ashitaba strengthens the blood or helps to work on
Hmm.
the liver, but what you're sharing is that like deeper level of inner workings with the plant. So it was really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that can be also very different. It's like we grow. Funny enough, like ashwagandha grows like a weed now. Like after we
Hmm.
struggled for a while to have it, and now it kind of become yeah, and ashwagandha is like such an herb where people just say, "Well, I can't take it." It's like it's not my herb, and I can have really interesting reactions to it. And I think as much as our taste buds react, I think there's karmic connections to plants, like, and it might not be your plant. It's like, and also how it also how you react depends how sensitive you are, like, and what body consciousness you have. I brought it to a local health food store, and one of the people who works there has chronic fatigue, like long COVID, and she just immediately had a difference. Like it changed, it helped her immediately. And then other people, they kind of been taking it for months and said, yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
it's like it's very different how we react to herbs, and how we connected to them as well.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I feel like I often say getting to know herbs is a lot like getting to know people, you
Yep.
know, but
Yep.
so there are people that you just fall in with
Yeah.
and you have a deep kinship with right from the beginning. There are some people who like maybe you aren't close at first, but then that
Yeah.
closeness develops over time. And then there's some people who are just like, that's not my person.
Yeah. And then
And
there's those,
the
yeah,
plants
those
are like
who
that too.
really struggle with, and they become your best friends.
Yep, that's true too. Yeah. Well, you've mentioned working with Ashitaba as food, as medicine, having it powdered. You mentioned it in skincare.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I feel like someone out there might be wondering about a tincture since that's a popular form of
Yep.
tincture. Do you use tinctures as well?
Yes. And I use fresh herb pretty
Fresh.
much with almost everything.
Mm,
Um, Fresh herb with ashitaba, with the leaf and the stem, and fresh can be wilted up to 24 hours, because
mm,
we also um, ashitaba is also an example for me how we as a farm would really like to change the world in what means farming, what means healing, what means local healing. We work together with a good friend who grows ashitaba for us, and he's half Japanese. And so he and his wife are about to retire, so they started growing ashitaba for us instead of going to farmers markets. It's basically, the idea is to find more growers who would biodynamically grow ashitaba for us, and farmers who really don't want to deal with any production, or go into dietary supplements, and don't want to deal with legal stuff, and but guarantee um, the farmers a future, and an income, and then guarantee basically the consumer and customer biodynamically grown high vibration herb. And so kind of the Ashitaba not only strengthening the individual, kind of strengthening the community, and the the person who's milling, who's grinding the Ashitaba for us, is in Watsonville, which is, we're in Aromas, which is 15 minutes away. And he has been around since the 70s. He's like, and he said, "Oh, I once had this Japanese lady, and I also did grind Ashitaba for her." And so it's this network of relationships, and we actually distributed to like an alternative distributor, like Azure, who basically, again, high quality vibration, local people. And so Ashitaba is for me becoming a um, tomorrow's leaf, literally, how it
mm.
can change the individual and our health. And we would like it to find its way into um, the American market, just to change the market, not because we always say we don't want to, do I want to make yet another product like out there, like, but it's just how can this plant really change the world?
Hmm. How long have you been working with Ashitaba? Like, when do you remember the first time that you tried it?
Yeah, it's like it was, as you might know from the archangelica, the seeds have to be used right away. They lose their potency pretty quickly. So we got some seeds from someone, and then we had really low germination rate, and then we tried again, and then someone gave us plants, and then we visited someone on their farm. And like you said, it's like people. It's the same thing with lightroot. Like we had the turkeys eating all the lightroots we had, and like and it's this kind of almost a question: do you really want to work with me? And then it's like, yeah, we're stubborn. We really want to work with you. And then I have many. It's a bit of a problem. Like if you see our garden, we have, I don't know how many different herbs that we have in on our farm. It's this kind of getting to know each other. It's like, who are you? What can you do? How can we work together? and then how do you fit in my biography, and how can I experience you, and how can is it your time, or is there maybe a time later? And so there's often like a new herb, like gypsy wort, like it has been sitting like in our garden for like ever. And then like 2 weeks ago, I started digging up like gypsy wort, and I was ecstatic
Hmm.
just by experiencing that being and the roots, and kind of like, oh my god, what is that being? Where have you been? Like, so long story short,
Hmm.
it's this dance. It's this dance until you kind of years,
Hmm.
until from a first encounter, a curiosity actually. It's a curiosity. Let's say I read a book and now it's the internet. It's like, oh my god, what's that herb? And we kind of plant junkies, nerds. Like, so whenever we see something, we want to grow it, and then it arrives on a farm, and then it might die again. And then so it's this really beautiful journey, kind of to get to know each other.
Hmm. That's what I was wondering, just because Ashitaba seems to have really woven its way into your life on many different
Hmm.
levels. And so I was
Hmm.
kind of wondering if it was like, how long that relationship took to develop
Hmm.
and if it was, love at first bite or, but you've kind of
Yeah.
explained that like there was some persistence on your part to get to know
Yeah,
Ashitaba.
I would say it has been 7 years um, to get to this point. And then also, yeah, like deep breath here. Distributing, right? It's one thing just using it for your own purpose and growing it for your own purpose. And for whatever reason, we decided to go out in the world and face the FDA and the distribution world. And so it took us like a year to get that packaging right, and to find someone to locally to grind it, and to find a partner to grow it. And I mean, but again, there it's beautiful what that plant did, like how Ashitaba brought us together and created these relationships. But I think at least 7 years, if not longer. Yeah.
And Karen, you've mentioned some things about the farm, and I'd like to talk more about the farm. But
Hmm.
before we change gears, I'm wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to say about Ashitaba.
Um, Anything else I would like to say? It lasts. Its strength. If you harvest a leaf and you put it in your like fridge, like it lasts forever. So it kind of shows also the vitality it has. You can work. You can make full herb tincture. You can. We did make a tincture with the root as well, with the seed as well. There is people cook with it. We briefly mentioned it, but not just raw in smoothies. Also, there's a chef down in LA who makes ashitaba ravioli and stuff. So
Mm,
and what's the yeah? Well, the only thing, but we can also talk about this later. Um, the Ashitaba being a sun being, kind of working on the self, kind of like, and the moon being kind of the archangelica. So I also going to Culpepper and seeing Ashitaba uh, being a very strong sun being, kind of, and also kind of bringing um, different as a St. John's word, where it brings the light into the dark night of the soul, but it's more like strengthening the self.
mm. Yeah, I'm not having met this plant. I'm getting this like better picture of it from how you're describing like its vibrancy, its big growth,
Hmm.
its vigorous
Hmm.
growth. It's feels very, if we're going to talk about Chinese medicine, very yang in nature.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
the sun aspect, yeah, interesting.
but it also feels kind of protecting. It has something. Um, I mean, the samurai is not exactly maybe a nice picture, maybe a violent picture, but if you look at more like the knight, the protecting knight, so it has. Um, I feel it has some protective forces, some guiding forces, like yeah, like the strength, like that strength it has is um, protective in a way. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, well, I think, more than anything, just your descriptions of the plant and how you've gotten to know the plant over time is really fascinating. And I think whether or not somebody listening gets to meet Ashitaba, that is like a lesson in itself of just getting to know the plant over time
Mhm.
and just, feeling how it works on these different levels. So thank you for sharing
Mhm.
all of that.
Mhm.
Well, so you've mentioned a lot about your farm, and I'd like to talk more about the farm and your other offerings and what you're doing. I know this is a huge topic, but I'm wondering if you could just briefly describe what biodynamic farming is, because it
Yeah.
occurs to me that some people might not know that. And you've also mentioned like high vibration
Yeah.
stuff, so that might be something that people are unfamiliar with too. So
Yeah.
um, I think biodynamic farming is so cool. And then the dedication it takes. Anyway, I'll let you describe it, but yeah, how would you describe biodynamic farming, Karen?
Um, well, talking to most likely an herbalist audience, um, when I, as a young woman, I always felt that I was not, I was outside of everything. And I saw the beauty in on this earth and in nature, but I didn't really feel part of it. And I also didn't want to be a white person because I felt I was part of the problem. And when I started biodynamic farming and I learned about anthroposophy, what it opened to me was a picture that as much as there is four elements, there is the four kingdoms, like the soil, the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the humans, and that together that creates a whole. And my importance in all this is I'm having a huge responsibility as a human being to communicate with these other kingdoms and to bring all of us to the next level. And as a human being, we have a self consciousness, which you can say there's consciousness in the earth and there's consciousness like in definitely animals and the plants, but there's no self consciousness. Like that self consciousness gives us a certain kind of freedom. That's also why we can destroy this planet. But this self consciousness also allows us to do, for example, alchemy, like distilling. I distill a lot. And distilling is basically kind of working together with nature, but bringing nature almost like to, and I'm not saying that in a valuable way, it's but bringing to a next level, to something new. And so we're creating something new together. And and we both need it with what we can bring. And biodynamic farming is very much like you can say regenerative farming. You just want to give back more than what you take. But biodynamic farming, there's a saying, spirit never without matter, and matter never without spirit. So everything that manifests in matter has is a manifestation of spirit. And so when we work with plants, animals, it's easier for people, but also with the earth, weather, you can say earthquakes, droughts, that is all a manifestation of spirit. So biodynamic farming has very much a very strong spiritual component and sees human beings not as dominating oppressors. It's basically someone who takes nature by the hand and heals everyone involved. And so
Mm,
healing is for me the core of biodynamic farming. And relationships is for me the core of biodynamic farming because in biodynamic herbalism or medicine, you look at and farming, which is for me, and also for Rudolf Steiner, was very not the same, but intimately connected. You look at um, Mars and you look at your gallbladder, you look at iron, and iron is metal. You look at the color red, and you look at um, everything is connected. So, kind of a plant and a planet and an organ, and you can say a color or like so it kind of creates this really beautiful textile, like painting, where I actually am embedded into a world where we are the microcosmos that is a reflection of the macrocosmos. And you can say the stars are reflected in my organs, and my birth chart is a reflection of what happened in the heavens at that moment in time. And it has an impact on my gallbladder or my liver or my brain or my being, And it does the same thing with plants, and it does the same thing with with animals and the soil. So what I get such an endless kick out of is um, looking at and also if you're curious, like kind of how are these things connected, right? And you can I mentioned Culpeper earlier, kind of like, so what are sun beings like in the plant world, right? And how is that threefoldedness with our nerve sense, with our rhythmic and our metabolic system, how expresses itself in the plant, and how is it expressed in the animal kingdom, right? And what can we learn from that? And then we can start playing with it. We can start making medicine with it. We can actually put this puzzle pieces together and start experimenting. And all we have to do is kind of listen and pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And biodynamic farming there's the biodynamic preparations, but again, the base of all this is working with planetary rhythms, acknowledging that there is the visible and the invisible, the physical and the metaphysical, and working with these energies. And then the biodynamic calendar is very much kind of working with planetary rhythms. And then anthroposophic medicine is very much kind of putting together um, the three kingdoms in medicine, which is just incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds like this, like you said, relationships and connection, like
Yeah,
those are things that stick out for me of
yeah,
that this is a system of relationships and connection and
yeah,
as you said, healing through
yeah,
farming.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
healing everything. It's kind of um, there's a Native American view to look at earthquakes and droughts, kind of what is too much, which emotion is too much, and which is not enough, and you can look at global warming as kind of an inflamed being, or you can say us as human beings. The imaginations are infinite, right? Kind of like where if we see the earth as a living being um, and see what we're doing with this living being, and but it also reflecting what we're doing to ourselves. So it's just basically um, paying attention. And it's like we're living in a world that is so specialized in everything, that kind of so fragmented and so polarized, like so that we actually kind of forget about the whole. And I think biodynamics is very much looking at the relationships and the whole and the responsibility of everyone in that.
Mhm. Well, thank you for that beautiful description. And I'd love to hear, like, I know you do so much. You mentioned the distilling. I know you sell a wide range of herbal products, and then you also have this other offering. I'm going to let you describe, but it seems like you're offering workshops on biodynamic farming, and you have a hub
Yeah,
for that as well. Yeah, I'd love to
yeah.
hear about that.
Um, Education was always like, since I met Delmar like 15 years ago, we had interns, and we had the Biodynamic Association of Northern California for meetings on our farm. So education, as in sharing what we're doing because we're so excited about it,
Mm.
um, is very much has always been a part of our farm. But it was kind of difficult, and we came to the point like where we are a functioning farm, a for-profit farm, and that is difficult enough to make it in this world. And then carry education and interns and paying interns, which we did, was just at some point too much. Like we couldn't.
Mm.
So, and then we realized like education has to be there has to be gift money coming in to support education on a farm, because we could not care, we could hardly take care of ourselves. And then what we created is a nonprofit, and it's called Millefolium, after Yarrow, Achillea
Mm.
millefolium. And the reason why we chose Millefolium because if you look at the flower head of yarrow, it's all these individual little flowers that are striving like a radar dish kind of to the like same goal, and but as individuals, not as a and so where we are at with that is like we're creating a new apprenticeship program. So anybody who's listening and is interested, like by April, we'll have a new apprenticeship offering together again. In the past, we had teachers from Italy, from the East Coast, like various doctors and farmers on our farm, and we would like to start that again and expand that. We also, whoever works for us, like education is free. Everyone can take part in these educational endeavors. And we're a bit shy, and you did the jump, and you do it beautifully. It's like online kind of, and we need some help with that. But yeah, education is very important to us because we also notice when we take others by the hand, they take us forward. Like, so we learn when we learn from others and teach.
So true. And that's millefolium.org that people could go visit.
Millefolium.org, yeah.
Yeah.
And we also, I mean, on blossomsfarm.com, there are some events. We also, going back to nature rhythms, we had a big Michaelmas, like a fall festival, like here on the farm, which we did the biodynamic preparations, which can be pretty intense. You know, you butcher an animal, and like, but then you are making medicine out of them, like with plant parts as well. And but I'm saying that because Blossom's Farm also is dedicated to have more festivals, because that's the rhythms of nature celebrated. And I think one of the reasons why we're in this mess is we're so disconnected from nature, but also of the rhythms of nature. And we would like to celebrate these with the arts. My partner is also an opera singer and an excellent farmer and plant person and opera singer. So
Oh, wow.
basically bringing music on the farm and the arts on the farm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I'll put all the links in the show notes so folks can easily find you. Well, Carin, you shared a delightful recipe with a honey-based recipe for Ashitaba, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes. So we talked about Ashitaba being strengthening us, like being a sun being that helps us to do the work that we need to do in the world. And so a lot of us want to stay away from alcohol, regardless if it's recreational or tinctures. So I thought, what does the world need, and which menstruum do I want to put Ashitaba in? The recipe I gave you is you can do the same recipe with either alcohol, with oil, or with honey. And that's why I love it so much as well. And I mentioned also the three-foldedness. I do work when I make formulas, but also formulas for skincare. Looking at if you look at your skin actually is three-folded with the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutis, I think. So your nerve sense, your rhythmic, and your metabolic system are actually kind of represented in your skin by the nerve cells being at the top, and then you have the mediating layer in the middle, and then you have the fat cells at the bottom. So what that shows you is that three-foldedness. You can say that divine trinity is actually everywhere in us. And so working with that picture, that imagination in formulas, I did with this honey. So the Ashitaba is the rhythmic system, the leaf, and then you have burdock being the root, kind of the nerve sense system. You have the roses being the flower, so and the rosehip being the fruit. And light roots, you have another root in there, but that's kind of like a whole other story we have to talk another time about. But the idea is like that you have also four elements. You have the three systems and the self in there with the fruit. And these three together kind of, again, I could talk about it from a physical or from a metaphysical or from a strengthening from kind of what roses do and what Ashitaba do. Like Burdock, I just wanted to bring the gut aspect in it, like what Ashitaba also works on, and then the skin again, kind of, I brought these three beings together also as a Mercury being, a sun being. It was mainly sun beings, kind of lighter being a sun being, and the roses being Venus. So basically having fun with who do we need now to support us on our journey? That was kind of the question that I asked when I put these all together. Honey can be tricky, so sometimes I do feel honey in my stomach, but honey can help to absorb bringing these herbs deeper in your tissue as well. But it's not for everyone. Same with alcohol, you can say, but the beauty about alcohol is the absorption, especially with Ashitaba into the blood. But when I made this honey, which I actually have here, I added a little bit of orange peel to it, like a little crunch. And so it's very lovely, and it's kind of like a treat for me, because I usually stay away from honey. But again, for me, it's very important that you know that you can make a beautiful hair oil out of the same formula as gorgeous hair oil. And the same formula is a beautiful energizing gut support tincture. And I have to say, this is this is not like something I made years ago. I was inspired by you, Rosalee.
Oh, it's a brand new recipe. Lovely.
And so it's very new. And the way I am, most likely, I would totally redo it next week. So, but the core is really what do we need right now? What do we need right now on our journey? And I think that's why I made this. But when it comes to Ashitaba, just Ashitaba alone is the powder I take every morning. And Burdock has been a long friend just because of my eczema.
I could see that mixture being wonderful by the spoonful, but also as a topical. I like honey masks and stuff, so that sounds like a nice way to do it too. Well, thank you so much for sharing, for creating this recipe for us and for sharing it with us. And listeners can download their beautifully illustrated recipe card at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com. Thank you so much.
Gorgeous. Thank you.
And I have one last question before we go. And that question is, how do herbs instill hope in you?
They instill hope in me because they are, I used that picture of being taken by the hand and moving forward. We need each other to transform ourselves. And you can say every life is a transformation. We all go through, from birth to death, a transformation. But plants, they help us on that path. But as humanity, we on that path as well. And the reason why plants and nature with animals and the soil and the earth give me hope is because they are the greatest teachers, and they will help us to know ourselves.
I love that, Carin, and I can see how, what you've shared with Ashitaba and how that comes, the specific example of how that shines through. Well, this has been just an utterly fascinating conversation on so many levels. Thank you so much for sharing so much about Ashitaba and the philosophy of biodynamics, and also just your own inner philosophy is really shown through in a really beautiful way. So thank you so much for being here and spending the time with us.
Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. I hope we'll continue our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carin.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Don't forget to head over to the show notes at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com to download your beautifully illustrated recipe card. There, you'll also be able to sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is the best way to stay in touch with me. You can find more about Carin on their websites at blossomsfarm.com and millefolium.org. If you'd like more herbal episodes to come your way, then one of the best ways to support this podcast is by subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I deeply believe that this world needs more herbalists and plant-centered folks, and I'm so glad that you're here as part of this herbal community. Also, a big round of thanks to the people all over the world who make this podcast happen week to week. Emily Thomas Anderson is the project manager who oversees the entire podcast operation, from guest outreach to writing show notes and on and on. I often tell people, I just show up. Emily does most of the heavy lifting. Nicole Paul is the operator for the entire Herbs with Rosalee school and community. She keeps an eagle eye view on everything to ensure it's running smoothly. Francesca is our fabulous video and audio editor. She not only makes listening more pleasant, she also adds beauty to the YouTube videos with plant images and video overlays. Tatiana Rusakova is the botanical illustrator who creates gorgeous plant and recipe illustrations for us. I love them, and I know you love them. Once the illustration is ready, Jenny creates the recipe cards as well as the thumbnail images for YouTube. Alex is our behind-the-scenes tech support and social media manager, and Carin and Emily are our student services coordinators and community support. If you've written in with a question, undoubtedly you got help from them. For those of you who like to read along, Jennifer is who creates the transcripts each week. Xavier, my handsome French husband, is the cameraman and website IT guy. It takes an herbal village to make it all happen, including you. Thank you so much for your support through your comments, reviews, and ratings. One of my favorite things about this podcast is hearing from you. I read every comment that comes in, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Ashitaba. Okay, you've lasted to the very end of the show, which means you get your very own gold star and this herbal tidbit. For this week's herbal tidbit, let's talk about a fascinating study on Ashitaba. This herb has been celebrated for its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and researchers wanted to see if it could help support liver health, especially for people who drink alcohol regularly. In a 12-week, placebo-controlled study with 82 participants, many of whom were heavy drinkers, Ashitaba supplementation was shown to significantly lower GGT levels, which is a marker of liver stress in heavy drinkers. While other liver enzyme levels didn't show much change, this finding suggests that Ashitaba might be a helpful ally in improving liver function for those who indulge a little too often. Just one more reason to marvel at the supportive potential of herbs.